Thank you. Okay, let me go over the rules very briefly. As Mr. Mazeroski said, no question will be asked if it's only answerable by one candidate. The whole point of this debate is to be able to compare their responses. We are not going to time the candidates' answers. We have tossed a coin for who goes first and who goes second, and then we'll alternate back and forth. And each candidate will get a chance to answer, and if he wants, a chance to rebut. But there won't be surrebuttal, all right? I reserve the right, even though it's not a timed format, to cut off any candidate who I feel is boring everybody to tears. I am asking everyone in the audience to please turn off their cell phones and pagers now. And that's because this is being taped, and you know that the sound of your cell phones is going to pick up much better than the voices on the tape. That's not what the audience is here for. I don't expect any problems from this audience. However, I am asking you to hold your applause, your boos, and your comments until the end of the debate, so that we'll have time for the candidates to really get into some of these issues. If you have questions that haven't yet been submitted to Mr. Mazeroski, and you think of something you want to write down on a card and get up front during the debate, just hold the card up. Somebody will be around to pick it up.
I'll pick it up.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Mazeroski will pick it up. That having been said, the candidates, by the way, will have both an opening statement and a closing statement. We did a coin toss. The opening statement goes to Mr. Davis.
Thank you. I want to thank Kurt and the members of the Southbury Business Association for inviting me here this evening and giving us the opportunity to talk. When I became, as the owner of the Southbury package store, I was one of the first members of this group in the early 1960s. When I became a member of the Planning Commission in 1981, it became clear to me that there was a direct conflict of interest in my being part of both organizations. I applaud the efforts of the SBA in proposing new regulations to the Zoning Commission over the years, and my advice has been sought by your members on many occasions. We have been partners in the growth of this town for many decades. Today's business environment is a challenge. It's a struggle to make a profit, and making a profit is the bottom line. Businesses are failing, and business models are changing. People are shopping on the internet for all kinds of products and services, from books to insurance. Southbury has empty storefronts. The town's Economic Development Commission has compiled a list of those vacancies and posted them on their website, and is actively soliciting the interest of companies wishing to locate here. Southbury is a very desirable location because of its demographics, its location on I-84, and its favorable tax rate. As First Selectman, I have worked hard to control spending, to reduce the mill rate. Today, the town is spending $660,000 less than it did 3 years ago. If you don't live in Southbury but do business here, you pay taxes to the town. Today, you are paying less to the town than you did last year, but you still get exceptional protection afforded by our police force, our fire department, and our other emergency services. As the owner of the Southbury store in Delhi, I can't afford more taxes. The taxes I pay the state have increased, and the fees have doubled. Regulations and licensing is out of control. I need a license to sell cigarettes, a license to make sandwiches, a license to have a weighing scales, a license to sell milk, a license to sell patent medicines, a license to sell sunglasses, and those licensing fees have doubled under the Democratic Malloy administration. I just can't afford more taxes, and neither can you.
Thank you, Mr. Edelson.
Well, good evening, and I want to also thank the Southbury Business Association for organizing this important forum. It seems to me that it was only yesterday that we had the last of these forums between the candidates, but it was actually 4 years ago, and I was the moderator. I think it's a lot easier being the moderator. As many of you I know, I was on the board of the SBA, and I'm currently on the program committee. In addition to the good work that the SBA does for the community, I am an active member because I believe in the philosophy of this group. Support the businesses that support Southbury. I have been a proponent of that in my own local business. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I operate Cornucopia at Oldfield Bed and Breakfast. We came to Southbury 7 years ago to reopen the site. I would come to the SBA meetings and I would tell you that we had the premier bed and breakfast in Southbury. I was quite confident in that statement because we were the only B&B in Southbury. But someone recently pointed out that not only are we a premier bed and breakfast, but we're also the highest rated lodging in the region with a 5-star rating by TripAdvisor. This comes from our commitment to exceed our guests' expectations based on our combined experience in customer service. I organized and participated in a workshop on customer service for ExxonMobil at the Disney training facilities in Orlando. Most people rate Disney Corporation, especially their theme parks, as the gold standard of customer service. The phrase I left with was, quote, treat your employees the way you want your employees to treat your customers. I believe we have good employees working for the town, but through years of informal management, they are a group that is not being inspired to work more coherently and utilize their capabilities to the best of their ability. I think a First Selectman with professional managerial experience can help turn that around, improve overall efficiency, and therefore continue to reduce operating costs and our taxes. Prior to moving to Southbury in 2004, I had completed a 23-year career with ExxonMobil Corporation, including positions in financial and corporate planning, managing development and implementation of accounting and operation systems, manager of the marketing planning department, public affairs advisor, and an emergency response coordinator. I was then offered an opportunity to be the general manager for Bermuda in 1998. Now, I never get much sympathy when I point this out, but when I went to Bermuda, the situation was not good. In 1997, a year before I got there, a young man had been brought in to become the manager of our operation in Bermuda. In a matter of months, he had caused the employees to stage protests. He had offended our largest customer, the electric utility, and he had the service station managers or service station dealers up in arms over his promotional policies. He even had our long-term supplier of trucking operations so angry that when I met him for the first time, he threatened me with bodily harm. The fact that our competitors were taking market share away from us didn't even make my top 10 list. Needless to say, there were some difficult days from the beginning. However, through effective internal communication as well as external communication, I was able to turn that situation around. Soon after, I was able to find a qualified Bermudian to take my place. He is still there, and as he says, based on the changes that I was able to put in place, the company set off on a course to quadruple its earnings over the past 10 years. That came from well thought out and executed plans. I tell you all that because I come here tonight to say that I have the experience to handle tough situations, work cooperatively, and resolve issues efficiently. I have already started on that road with the 8 position papers that we've put forward and that I believe are already changing the nature of what people are talking about in town. This week's position paper focuses on how I would improve town hall management, and I encourage you to read that on our website. Finally, I want to address some concerns that I hear from time to time during the campaign. It goes like this: don't elect Ed, he's just one of those tax and spend liberals. Well, I'm here to say that I want to be clear. I have a proven and consistent fiscal conservative track record, and I have that record and I can prove it. First of all, I can assure you that I was not able to survive at ExxonMobil if I did not know how to control my cost budgets. Second, I think you can look at my record on the Board of Finance, and you will see that I've been a strong proponent of looking for ways to do things more efficiently. And that is the primary reason why I'm running. For example, this week at the Board of Finance meeting, this past Tuesday, I raised the topic of the very slow pace of implementation of the results of an energy audit prepared on town-owned buildings in June of 2010, almost 18 months ago. The report identified many recommendations, including simple things like installing automatic setback thermostats in our town hall building, so we're not heating them on the weekends or cooling them in the late evenings. That could save thousands of dollars according to this report. But we haven't done anything about many of these recommendations, with one exception that we've moved forward on. So all of these things represent money that we could have saved, but we haven't. That's waste, that's leaving money on the table, and that's our money. So I think those who throw out old and outdated cliches about tax and spend liberals have not taken a look at my professional record nor my service in Southbury. I must make this point clear. Trying to characterize a person based on party affiliation is not fair and is not logical. Some are trying to nationalize the election, or maybe even put it on a state level, and that is not in the best interest of Southbury. This is a choice between two different views on how to manage town hall and lead the town of Southbury. Bill has articulated his conviction in limited government and in not changing things, or as he has written, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I believe that is a caretaker form of management, and I don't think it's in the best interests of our town. I believe in an effective government that provides the right framework for business to flourish, and that should be continuously looking at how we can do things better. Better service to the residents and businesses of Southbury at lower cost. So I hope through your questions this evening, we'll be able to highlight those differences so you can make the right choice for Southbury. Thank you.
Thank you both. Sorry. The first question is a bit of a softball. And it will go to Mr. Edelson first. What do you think are the three most pressing issues facing the town of Southbury? If elected, how will you address those three issues?
Well, I believe they sort of go in order of the strategic or of the position papers that I put forward. The number one is, I believe, the lack of a strategic plan. The town charter was revised approximately 3 years ago, and that was identified as a major change. I think it was one of the most significant changes in the charter that was agreed to, and yet we haven't made progress on that. And I firmly believe if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. We need to know where we're going, and that's what a strategic plan would do. Most of the planning we do that's comprehensive is only short-term in focus. We should recognize our plan of conservation and development is a very effective long-term view, but we've not had a very good track record of going back to our plan of conservation and development and continuing to look at it and upgrade it or revise it as we go forward. So that's number one. Number two, I believe the Southbury Training School represents a major point of concern for me and for many residents. And again, I've broken that up into two different pieces, and maybe we'll have other questions on the training school as we go forward. And the third would be the moving towards more efficiency in town hall with better use of information technology. And I always try to say this is for two reasons. One is about efficiency and lowering our operating costs. And my record and my experience with ExxonMobil continually showed that effective use of technology is the primary way to cause improved organizational change that leads to lowering of costs. But I also believe that technology is also important for improving government. By making government more accessible to people, making information about your government more accessible to people by information technology leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to better government, lead to lower costs and a thriving community. So those would be my three: strategic plan, addressing the Southbury Training School, and more effective use of information technology.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Three things that are going to be important in the next 2 years for this term. I'd rank number one would be fiscal conservatism. If anybody hasn't noticed, the economy is not good out there. It's not getting better. We have many folks in town, many folks in Heritage Village who are in the process of foreclosure, losing their homes. They're making decisions about whether to get medication or to pay their rent, electric bill. There's a lot of people out there that are in harm's way financially. I think it's important that this town keep a lid on taxes, not raise taxes, not to add to their to their burden. And I fully intend to do that. The second thing is the training school, as Ed said, but I see it differently. The training school is a 5, 10, 15 years down the line. Our immediate concern with the training school is they're turning their services over and expecting the town to do those services. On the 17th of October, the town is being asked, I use that in quotation marks, by the state to assume the dispatch duties of the Southbury Training School. We delayed that for a year for simple financial reasons. We had nothing in the budget. It's going to cost money for us to do that. There was no money allocated in that year's budget to make that change. We did delay that over a year. We had the town, or the state, we asked them, and we asked them to put up money to help pay for that transition. They finally agreed to come up with $64,000. It is now in escrow with our attorneys, and the day that the switch is thrown and we do assume the dispatch duties, that money will come to the town. In order to effect that change, we had to hire 2 new full-time dispatchers. So it's not, the town is not a money-making proposition for the town. The next logical step that the state seems to be heading for is to make the town take over their fire services. They have a fire company over there with full-time fire staff. They have just done that in the town of Middletown with Connecticut's Valley Hospital. Middletown is now assuming the functions of their fire department. Middletown has a full-time fire department. It's not a great deal of problem for them to do that. Southbury has a volunteer fire department. If we are required to take over the fire services at Southbury Training School, it becomes a real problem and a real financial load on the town of Southbury. If we have to hire 2 people to run a shift at the firehouse, full-time firemen, it becomes very expensive, probably in the nature of $2 million a year. That's money that's going to have to come out of your taxpayers' pockets. We don't know that that's going to happen, but that's the next logical step. Which brings me to the third thing, is volunteerism. I've been involved in this town for over 30 years as a volunteer. I have never seen volunteerism at such a low point. It's difficult to get people to volunteer for boards and commissions. We need those people, we need their expertise. The volunteers in this town have been wonderful to this town. They've saved us a lot of money, they've made great advances for this town. Heritage Village especially doesn't seem to want to be involved anymore. It seems to be the culture of the society that says, just leave me alone, I want to pay my taxes and I don't want to participate. Well, that's absolutely the wrong attitude that I was brought up with. I volunteered in 1981 and I've been doing it ever since. It's very important to the growth of the town that we get volunteers. And we have to change that mentality of volunteering and get people more involved. And that's going to be a real challenge in the next couple of years.
Rebuttal, Mr. Edelson?
Well, I do want to echo Bill's point about volunteerism, and that it was one of my, I think it was our 5th position paper, where I laid out some specifics about what we need to do to encourage and instill that sense of volunteerism. I think part of that comes from leadership, to make sure that people recognize that their volunteerism is appreciated, as well as it's important. It's really critical to the way we run the town. So I agree with Bill on that. And again, I'd like to go back to the strategic planning, because what Bill talks about in the long drawn-out activity with regard to the dispatching should not have been a surprise. If we had been in close collaboration with the Board of Directors of the Southbury Training School, or Board of Trustees, I guess I should say, as well as the state, this should not have been a surprise to us. We've been all seeing the declining enrollment at the training school, so it's not a secret what's been going on there. But when you do a strategic plan, that's one of the things you want to lay out is your opportunities and threats that confront you as an organization, whether you're a business or a government. And that clearly to me, and what Bill refers to as the fire and the ambulance, these are the kinds of things we want to identify early, plan for, and then be prepared when the event comes. In fact, we want to be participating in the plan and the activity. So it's done in conjunction and collaboration as opposed to in conflict. And you know what we, although I see some of my good friends in the back, we don't want to bring the lawyers in when we just have to resolve what should be a resolvable issue. So I agree with that. On the fiscal conservatism, I do want to echo, or I do want to applaud, or not applaud, but I want to agree with Bill. We're going to be in for some tough times. You know, one of the comments that I've picked up on is when I've talked to people in town, especially the, as an example, the religious leaders, they're saying, you know, it's getting tough to write a sermon because I don't even have time anymore to write my sermon. I'm spending so much time in pastoral care because so many of my parishioners are in such tough times because of the economy. Now, we can sit back and say the economy is bad, the economy is getting worse, or we can start to listen to some leaders who are stepping forward and saying we got to change things. We got to change the way we do things in Connecticut. We have had 20 years of, I think we are number 47th in the country in job creation when you look over a 20-year period. As some people say, you know, the other people at the bottom are Michigan, but they have an excuse. It was the auto companies. We don't have an excuse except our own internal motivation and drive as a state, and we've lost that. Some of you might have read about the governor's job summit happened earlier this week, last week, I'm sorry. It had Michael Porter, some would say the guru of competitiveness from the Harvard Business School there, talking about when he came first to Connecticut 20 years ago, he thought Connecticut had the world in its palm of its hands. We were innovative, we were creating jobs, we were creating ideas, we had all the right assets, and that got plundered over the last 20 years. Now, if we keep doing things the way we've been doing them, if we keep saying let's keep our tax structure the way it's been, if we keep saying let's keep business or governments working the way they have been, we can assume things will just keep the same. So we need to shake some things up. We have to address some of the questions or issues that Bill talked about as far as looking for better ways that we look at approving businesses and creating an environment for businesses to locate here. That's why I particularly put in my position paper on preserving our natural environment. And it's time that we took a new look at the way that we approve projects in town. I think it's way too cumbersome. I don't think it's to the benefit of the town, I don't think it's to the benefit of the people, and it's not to the benefit of the businesses who want to come in here and do work. We can look at other towns for examples. We don't have to have what I've seen here in Southbury, that NIH syndrome. If it's not invented here, well, it couldn't be a good idea. We have to be willing to look at other towns for good ideas, how they've improved their practices, and start to apply them here. That's what I mean by continuous change.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, anything further?
Just on that last point, Southbury is one of the most best business-friendly environments in which to get permits to do a new business. I'm in close touch with the building department, and people come in there and routinely say they've never been helped. In fact, it happened just this evening. They've never been helped more than when they were in that building department looking to get a permit. And I think that it's a disservice to say that we do things cumbersomely.
Thank you both.